Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday with me, Ryan, aka Mac. This is a weekly show which covers everything from the world of Star Citizen over the past week. Links to everything discussed can be found in the description below, so let's get on with it. This week we see some awesome procedural planet shots from German magazine PC Games, a closer look into GrimHex plus what the Frankfurt office has been working on. If you are still to sign up to the RSI website, please use my referral code as shown on screen or in the description, and you will receive 5,000 United Earth credits which can be spent in the Voyager Direct store for your ships, your character, or whatever you choose. You don't have to spend anything to sign up, it's only once you pledge that I'll be granted an RP point, which will get me some little rewards in the future. So, Around the Verse episode 100, the final part 4, was the Foundry 42 in Frankfurt edition. We had Todd Pappy and the incredible Brian Chambers hosting. They say they are wrapping up the Free Fly week. It finishes this Monday, so if you haven't had a chance yet, do get in before Monday, as you will have missed out otherwise. The Argo, obviously, is the next concept sale. It'll be available for 2.5, and we'll have access to it once 2.5 is ready, and they'll put it up for sale then. From there, we had a studio tour of Foundry 42 Frankfurt. We got to see where all the departments are in their offices. I'll have a bit of that playing in the background, but do watch it if I don't put it up fully. And in terms of the studio update, they say they have continued work on Subsumption. They are pushing forward and done some core work on communication. In ship and FPS weapons, we saw the first clip, which was sort of a weapon transport forklift, which looks very, very cool. I do like this idea, and I expect this is what we'll probably use as well, these grav lifts to load our ships with things. Plus, the sneaky little Argo sitting in the background. Very, very nice. Cool little orange colour as well. I do hope it's orange when we buy them. Anyway, they have unified the lineup for the Bay-Ring laser cannons from sizes 2 to 6 there, just finishing off size 1 now. Next up was the Bay-Ring P8 SC submachine gun, a very, very cool looking submachine gun. It's on the final art stage now, and we can actually see the dynamic wear and dirt layers of it. It looks incredible how these will actually age over time. They've also continued work on procedural planets. They've done some bug fixing plus head stabilization, which we will see and feel in 2.5, we're told. Also optimizing and working on the local physics grid, which seems to be an ongoing task. So in feature testing and automated testing, they showed us a little ragdoll simulator, which tests sort of whether the ragdolls are colliding and working properly. Also, they have multiple AI doing the same thing, and this will test whether multi-crew ships will have issues with ragdolls, with multiple people ragdolling. So it kind of gets them on top of what the problems may be so they can fix it. The final screen we saw for this was the stress test to see how many characters they can have on screen at once. Every time it spawns, it'll kill it a second later, and then you can see them all flying off into the distance. Again, just stress testing the system, trying to find the bugs before they actually release it. So in visual effects, we saw some explosions and the process on how they make them. We saw fire and plasma explosions, so they can change the colour of the smoke, change the colour of the lighting inside the explosion. And also they showed us frame blending, which helps to optimize and make it far less skippy. And then at the end we saw the final version. Very, very cool. In systems they are working on is docking and landing and the Vandal behaviours. In level design they are working on truck stop, which I have no idea what this could be. Possibly some sort of, well, I suppose you can't really explain it more than truck stop. Also cargo depots and security stations. They want them to be modular so that they can fill out the solar systems quickly as possible, but still keep them varied. The most valuable post goes to Simoniak for his hauling star map. Very, very cool. The links are in the description. And from there, we had another behind-the-scenes, very cool look at GrimHex again. Now this, as we know, is located in the Yellow Asteroid Belt. Originally, it was a mining hub for all mining operations in the area called Green Imperial Hex. Basically, it was a place for miners to store their ships and their equipment, and then take shuttles to the mining facilities in the area. It has accommodations and shops, and once sort of the mining operations dried up, the miners then left and squatters came in, gangs took over, and it is what it is today. They say the difficulty of it is when it comes to matching landing pads with the sizes of the ships. For GrimHex, they're going to have hangars in the back so you can request parking and keep your ship safe from other players, rather than like we have at Korea where you land and your ship just destroys. I believe this is probably where the landing pads 2.0 came from in the feature list for 2.5, and it was a bit unsure as to what this actually is. This sounds like it's the first iteration of keeping your ship safe while you while you request them. They also needed a place for criminals to respawn rather than having them punished by time delays as they currently have. And it will keep evolving over the next few patches. They're going to start with a couple of shops and then unlock more over time. There'll also be a bar which is semi-complete, but also a kiosk where, this is very cool, where you can enter and bet on races, and then there's a tunnel so you can view where the ships are starting, and you will race through the asteroids and then obviously whoever wins, if you bet on that person, you will get a return. The plan for FPS, so it's a big discussion as to whether they should have it as an armistice zone or not. And basically what they're going to do is anything within the airlock will be weapon restricted. Everything outside of the airlocks you can fire. Now for the future, they will have other ways of policing it. So they'll allow you to keep your weapon with you, but you will be at risk if you pull it out. And I think what they'll likely do is either have automated turrets, which if you pull out your weapon or begin to fire, then you'll become a target. Plus security guards once they get AI in, and I think that'll be a big thing once AI and subsumption is complete, or to the point where they can actually put in security guards who will protect the place and protect those who aren't looking to fight. Anyway, they said they don't want it to be a constant deathmatch. They want it to be relatively safe, but obviously they don't want it to just be another armistice zone where no one can kill anyone. So the fast forward was the entry animation for the Super Hornet. Still work in progress, but still very, very cool. Anyway, that was Around the Verse, the final 100th episode. Let me know your thoughts. So in Reverse the Verse this week, they started off by mentioning that, if you don't know, Ben Lesnick was taken ill last week and he was recuperating in the hospital. He had a systemic infection. He is now back home. I believe he has been released from the hospital, which is great news. We all wish him a speedy recovery, and our thoughts are with him and Alexis. So straight on to the questions and answers. The first one being, is there any priority for a Star Citizen app? They said that work is being done on it and a mock-up is actively being built. There's no ETA, but there is one coming, which is very exciting. Next question, when will a full feature list for 2.5 be released? And they say it will be released once they move from the Eva Cotti phase to the patch phase. So hopefully in the next few weeks. Now I don't know if it's in the Eva Cotti. I believe it's not, but once they move out of Eva Cotti, that's when they'll release it to us. Third question, will the Argo have a jump drive? And they say no, it falls under a snub category, so it sounds like it can probably land on a planet, but it cannot jump between systems. Any other stations or buildings being worked on that we haven't seen? And he says, oh yes, a lot, but he didn't say exactly what. But regarding the GrimHex armistice, it was mentioned in ATV as well, but they said they'll have things that will punish you rather than prevent you from taking your weapon out. So your actions are your own. There will be a set of consequences and a force in place to stop you if you do bring out your weapon, but you will have the option to. This won't be in 2.5, it's going to be later on. So next question is, how is the in-game VoIP coming along? They say it's being worked on, but they can't say much else. He did say that they saw a sample of it during the show and tell, and it was literally the highlight of the show and tell, and it's something that Chris Roberts is very excited about. I'm sure a lot of us are as well. So the next question is, have you played through any of the Squadron 42 missions? Now, Jared says that he hasn't because he doesn't want to spoil it for himself, but Tyler has played through the entire game, every mission, because when he was in QA, it was part of his job. So yes, he's played through it, but they didn't say anything else or give it any sneak peeks. So next question is regarding the website and the forum and how it's coming along, or the new one. They say Org 2.0, which is what it used to be called, is now a full-blown and entire communications platform. Update, again, no ETA unfortunately, but we'll wait and see for that one. So moving on, is there a plan to release the Gold Horizon to the persistent universe, or is it still reserved for Squadron 42? Now that was the question, but as a lot of us will know, the original design for Gold Horizon was for Star Marine. It was the level or the map in which we will play Star Marine, which is like the FPS version of Arena Commander. Now they say they're not sure if it'll be included in the persistent universe. He doesn't know, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And something else about Star Marine is it looks like it's planned for 2.6, but we'll get onto that soon, because there was a German magazine which covered a lot of what was going on with procedural planets, but that's up next, so shh. Anyway, next question. Any plans for a shoulder-mounted RPG weapon? Now, they say many months ago they showed off a shoulder-mounted railgun, but they can't say, or they don't know whether an RPG weapon is being worked on. I would have thought there would be some sort of homing missile for when we're planetside and we're getting attacked by ships. So I think it's more just about time and getting other things out first. Next question. How is the AI coming along? Have they tested playing against AI NPCs? And he says yes, they have. It's heavily in Squadron 42, as you can expect. It will be more than just combat, but it is going very, very well. After that, they asked, will the Carrack go on sale? And he says eventually. Then, will there be a left-right lean mechanic in FPS eventually? And they say yes, it is part of the cover system. I don't know if it'll be the sort of to the point where it's like in Armour where you can lean left and right. I hope so, because it would be useful. But he says it's when you're close to a wall. This is what Tyler saw when he was in QA. When you're close to a wall, your character holds his gun up. That's currently in. But when you hold your mouse button down, your right mouse button down, you will peek around or peek over a wall. but that is all subject to change. This was a long while ago when Ilphonic was working on the game, so who knows, they could have added a proper lean in. We don't know yet. Next question, what land vehicles can we expect to see? So far, and it's pretty much what we already know of, is the Grey Cat, the Dragonfly, which could be classed as a land vehicle, the Ursa rover, which comes in the constellation Aquila, and the Phoenix, and the Karak also has its own rover. But also we saw in the ATV that little forklift that they use to carry the weapons around, so things like that may be some, classed as a land vehicle. Next question is to do with the Herald and info gathering, and will they be released together when the Herald is flyable? They say not likely, it's more likely that the info gathering mechanic will come later. They'll get the Herald flyable first, and then they will start adding more mechanics in. So last question, what tech is needed for the Merlin and the Constellation to dock? Is this landing pad 2.0? And he says, no, landing pad 2.0 is something completely different, and they're not sure when the Merlin and the Connie thing will be being worked on. It won't be 2.5. The landing pad 2.0 is more of an auto landing update to make it easier and a little better. So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, after that, Gurmak Basin, who is actually the concept artist for the Karak, it's his last day today, unfortunately. He's been with the company 2.5 years. He wants to do more freelance stuff, which is fair enough. This is all part of game development. People come in, do some work, freelance for Star Citizen, and then they will go off and do their own thing. He's currently working on developing a way to make space stations quicker and still keep them unique. But also, as a personal project, he wants to make a small single-seat fighter for Star Citizen. Now, this isn't necessarily going to make it into the game, but I'm sure Chris Roberts or people like that would be happy to include it. He did say he likes Anvil, and so it might be an Anvil-style single-seat fighter. We'll have to wait and see, but we wish him all the best. Anyway, just on a quick note, it sounds like procedural planets will be revealed at either Gamescom or CitizenCon, as they'll be holding off. That's why we haven't seen it in ATV, because he wants something special and big to show off. And looking ahead, they say the start of the new ATV version will be next week, or this week, as it's Monday. Obviously, LA will be the first one, and then they'll go and rotate through the different studios. RTV is changing as well in the same way. They will rotate from studio to studio, with either Tyler or Orlando hosting. The names aren't changing. They're going to stick with Reverse the Verse and Around the Verse. Also, the Subscriber Town Hall, which is the Subscriber RTV, will be next week. And it sounds like the character team will be part of that. So people who create the characters will be in the RTV Subscriber Edition. Anyway, that was a long-winded RTV. Let me know your thoughts. So during BritterCon, a magazine in Germany was released called PC Games, and in this magazine was a feature of Star Citizen speaking to the Frankfurt office with Brian Chambers, and basically they got a bit of a hands-on and played the procedural planet landing tech and all this sort of cool stuff. Chris and Erin were there as well, and the information I am getting now is from Reddit. I shall find the link below. It is all translated into English what was basically happening in this interview. So, the magazine were able to play the latest build that featured the procedural generated planets, and they claim to have flown down to a moon-sized planet, which was Delmar, part of the Nick system, and the landing zone that they aimed for was on the surface, was an abandoned mining station that we know as Levski. They approached from space and went into orbit, then entered through the atmosphere before landing on the surface, and they got out the cockpit and moved around freely on the planet's surface. They're also shown the latest of the Star Marine module, and apparently 2.6 will launch Star Marine as a separate module like Arena Commander, like we've seen in Arena Commander, exactly the same thing, but for FPS. And this was all demonstrated to the staff at PC Games. They also mentioned that it's a lot more polished on the FPS side and feels a lot better than the current FPS that we have now in the PU. And as an interesting side note, it was mentioned that they talked about maps as plural rather than a single Star Marine map. So as we know, 2.7 will bring procedural planets, and you'll be able to travel through the whole of the Stanton system, and all the planets and moons can be directly approached down to the surface. So in the Reddit page, they have like a bullet point form, which I'm just going to read off, which is basically what the PC Games saw and reported upon. So they said that they have a new lighting system as part of the procedural planets build, which looks far more natural. They say approaching the planet looks and feels technically better than Elite Dangerous. You can land anywhere manually, but you'll have an automatic landing when you get to fixed positions like particular landing zones. Microtech and Hurston will come in a follow-up patch after 2.7, so they won't be in for the first initial release. But they aim to have the Stanton fully playable, for example, with all the stations and the landing zones. According to Chris Roberts, about 40 locations by the end of 2016. There will be more jobs and missions as well. Trading should be in by then. Specifically, purchasing and the sale of goods should play a more important role. Chris describes that missions accepted up in a space station could lead you eventually down to planet surfaces. It's not clear if this is all going to be in with 2.7, but clearly this is something that Squadron 42 will benefit from. Planets and moons will also be revolving around the suns, with naturally simulated day and night cycles, which is incredible. When flying over the ocean, you'll notice the horizon has a correctly simulated curve as well. Trees and animals are planned, but it won't likely be with 2.7. They have them set up in a pre-made template which they call the ecosystems. These can be sort of brushed over the planet surfaces and then some magic blends and transitions to make it look more natural and consistent. Planetary surface and topology details are controlled by a dynamic level of detail system. They said some pop-up was visible during the planetary approach, but they described it as impressive regardless, and again, all of this is work in progress. They're also impressed by the cloud system, which wasn't just a simple texture layer, they say. It's described what could be, I think, what they used as the term of volumetric. So they have depth, they have height, and impact visibility, leading to mountain crests piercing through the crowd and the valleys being covered. Very, very cool. There isn't any artificially restricted view range as well. The visibility is rather a result of the volumetric calculation of the atmosphere. So it's not that the view range is restricted in any way, it is just because of the atmosphere causing the distance. So also during the presentation, it was a GTX 980 that was used. And apparently, the editor performance was getting 100 FPS on the planetary surface, which means that the in-game performance was around 45, and this is obviously without the full optimizations or anything else. So that's a good number to be starting with. They mentioned that subsumption AI is going to allow NPCs to form independent decisions based on environment and situational context. Subsumption AI is actually also being used in real life for programming robots with human-like behaviour. They didn't really clarify exactly what they mean by this, but it's not just being used in game development. So subsumption AI is saying that NPCs might have hobbies and things that possess their own virtual mind, which will allow them to remember and be influenced in their opinions of the player. To avoid performance issues, they control the update cycles for NPCs AI based on the player proximity. So, for example, update cycles go to 1 Hz instead of 60 Hz if no one is around. There was also a part about server architecture and how they intend to improve upon this in order to sustain more concurrent players in the same server zone, but the target is to reduce the number of instances. They intend to mesh servers, as we know, together in order to form a huge cluster, and the necessary optimizations are already being coded into Star Citizen accordingly, so they should also yield some marginal performance improvements on the client side. So as a separate edit to go through what he's just said, says one of the journalists wrote in his opinion piece that the Gamescom presentation is going to drop some jaws to the floor. It doesn't say that he's seen it or whether he's speculating, but he also wrote that he was positively surprised that all employees at Foundry 42 in Frankfurt, who he had the chance to talk with, seemed truthfully grateful to be able to work on a project and the challenges that it brings along. He says the enthusiasm just did not feel faked in any way. Anyway, the article has a small footnote saying that Brian Chambers pointed out repeatedly that all pictures still represent work in progress. Keep that in mind. What we hear here doesn't necessarily mean that it's all going to make it into the game or each patch isn't locked in any way, so there could be things missing, there could be things added. We don't know yet. But anyway, that was the notes about what was actually in this magazine. A big thank you to the guy who wrote it. I think his name was blah 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 78. Much appreciated on Reddit. Let me know your thoughts. Very exciting. I'll see if I can find the pictures to show you because they're just as exciting. So also this week we had a clean shot post called Crisis Fatigue, a must read for all you haulers out there. Ballmaker's Guide to the Galaxy was in this week as well, and it brought us the Hades system. And finally, sticking with the Galaxy theme, the Galactic Guide gave us some information into the Oberon system. So over the course of last week and into this week, in celebration of BritisonCon, I have been giving away an Avenger Stalker. Now, to enter, all you need to do is subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me over on Twitch, SuperMacBrothers Ryan. There is a link in the description. The winner will be announced on Wednesday on my vlog covering BritisonCon, so you have a couple of days left to enter, so good luck. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching and thank you to our subscribers, plus a massive thank you to our patrons as you make this possible. If you like what we do and want to help us make it better, follow the link in the description to our Patreon page to learn more.